My name is John Coughlin. I'm on the community relations team at GitLab. Thanks to everyone who's joining us today. Big thanks to those folks who are brave enough to turn on their cameras and let us all see their, smiling faces. I really appreciate that. This is a kind of new experiment for us, doing remote meetups, and so we're just trying to figure out, what works, what doesn't work. And so thank you for kind of being part of this experiment. And I think many of you probably understand the reason why we're starting to do our meetups remotely. But given the concerns around COVID-19, we've decided to put our in-person meetups on hold globally until the kind of pandemic slows down. But we really want to keep our community connected. I think one of the things that many folks are realizing right now as a result of the crisis is just the importance of community in their lives, and the importance of human connection. And so I'm excited to be here today and to see many of you. I know I've met many of you before, and some of the folks here are kind of new, but I'm hoping we'll become friends as we go through these meetups together moving forward. Just to do a quick introduction about GitLab for folks that are kind of new to GitLab in the community, maybe just joining because they saw a tweet or something. GitLab's a complete DevOps platform delivered as a single application. So there's kind of one interface, one conversation, one permission model, and all the features are kind of bundled under there. With GitLab, you're able to manage all of the 10 stages that we've defined of the DevOps lifecycle, from kind of managing those permissions, planning, source code management, CI/CD, part of which which will be the focus for today, all the way through securing, defending, monitoring your applications. Some other cool things about GitLab: we're the largest all-remote company in the world. So if any of you are kind of working remotely, maybe for the first time, and kind of rushed into that, we have a lot of great information available to help folks who are learning to work remotely or starting to work remotely more frequently, including an ebook that just came out. If you go to about.gitlab.com, you'll be able to download that ebook, which is a great way to get started. But there's tons of more resources available in our handbook, which brings me to our next point. GitLab is really famous for our transparency. We're extremely transparent. Our roadmaps, our strategy, pretty much everything about how we run the company is available in our handbook. So if you're curious about learning more about GitLab, not just the product, but also how we operate as a team, and what our values are, and kind of where we're going as a company, that's all available in our handbook. So I'd encourage you to check that out after today. So as I mentioned, this is our first remote meetup. I think one of the things we're going to do with our community organizers, and some of you may already be members of a local GitLab meetup group in your area, but we're going to try and take what we learned from doing these remote events ourselves, and build out resources that we can then share with local meetup organizers to help them plan remote meetups for their communities. Because I realize that because of time zones and language barriers and things, even though remote meetups offer lots of kind of scale and opportunity, they're still not totally inclusive, and we want to make sure that everyone in our community can still participate in GitLab events. And so we'll be sharing those best practices out with our meetup organizers, and hopefully they'll be able to organize remote meetups for their communities in the very near future. Today's agenda, just quickly, we're going to do a presentation with Michael Friedrich, who's one of our new developer evangelists. He'll be presenting GitLab CI, and then we'll be going into breakout groups. For the breakout groups, we're not going to have any specific topics, but we encourage folks to share where they're from, what they do, what they like to do in their free time, as a way to get the conversation started. And some other topics that might be of interest could be talking about Michael's presentation, talking about remote work, or just kind of talking about how you're managing the situation right now. I know a lot of us have been thrown into situations that are kind of outside of our norm, and we encourage folks to talk about whatever is on top of mind. And so if that's top of mind for you, don't feel like it's taboo. And most of all, just have fun and connect with other folks. you know, as I mentioned, this is our first time doing this, so expect some bugs like my internet crapping out at the top of the hour and me disappearing. You know, and the one thing I would ask is that folks stay muted during Michael's talk so as not to distract him. We'll have
I think he has some.
Speaking of internet crapping out.
I know. Oh, he's
sorry.
Might be the perfect time for you, Michael, to jump in.
Yeah, just one last thing. You know, we'd love for folks to participate in the future. We're going to be doing these more frequently. So if you're interested in speaking, organizing a meetup in your local community, whether that's remote or sometime in the future in person, or just have ideas for topics you want to hear about, definitely reach out to evangelist@gitlab.com. And I guess at this point, I'll throw it over to Michael before my internet drops again.
Yeah, thanks. I'm hoping that my internet still works. Just the one thing, I'm sharing the presentation with you in the chat, so everyone can just like watch my screen, and you can also like copy paste from the slides. The thing is, before I get started with everything, this is some sort of hands-on. So if you want to follow my exercises as I continue, you can just do that. Hi. And with that, I just want to like give you a little overview what I think could make your life easier with GitLab CI/CD and the Web IDE, which is something I prepared for today. Let's see if this works. Yes, it works. I just want to take the opportunity for the next like 25 to 30 minutes. We'll start with a short introduction of myself, some CI/CD overview, the first steps with the Web IDE to get the CI configuration started, then building some code or actually analyzing some code, then figuring out whether it builds or how does it work. Then back to some unit tests and exploring the stages in the pipeline, and at last a short conclusion. With that, a short introduction of myself. So my name is Michael Friedrich, which is totally funny to pronounce in English. I'm a developer evangelist at GitLab. It's my 4th week, so I'm pretty new to everyone, to the culture, to the company, to the community. I think I'm using GitLab for around about 3 to 4 years now, actually in production. Before joining GitLab, I was doing in the backend development on monitoring projects for the past 11 years. And before that, I was working at the University of Vienna in the domain administration department, which is kind of my nickname. It's DNS, and Michi is the lovely version of Michael in German. So that's me on Twitter, on gitlab.com, GitHub, wherever you want to stalk me. I'm a true open source believer, so everything I do, I'm trying to make it open source, to communicate, to share, to work on the greater success for everyone. And when I'm not doing anything open sourcey, I'm building Lego models. So I really love to like shut down my head and focus on the things to build and to see them. It's really funny and entertaining for me. Yeah, and you can also like follow me on Twitter and get a lot of Lego in your feed. For the technical evangelism team, I've added a link over here, so you can just check out what else is going on, what we are planning for this year. And if you want to like join my adventure or follow my adventure, what I'm doing, I've started blogging about what I'm doing at GitLab, which is kind of a lot in the past 3 weeks already. But with that, I want to just get things started. Yeah, we're not actually building Lego. That's just a Lego model at home. But we'll sort of look into what's coming. So I don't know if you're familiar with continuous integration and continuous deployment or continuous delivery sometimes. So I've just stolen the graphics from the documentation. Basically, as a developer, when I start working on a new feature, create a Git branch, I start to add my changes, new code snippets, and at some point I want to just get feedback whether it works or are there any specific breaking changes to be expected, because typically it works on my machine, which is my MacBook. Does not really apply to the production where, for example, Red Hat, Ubuntu virtual machines are running, or a Kubernetes cluster or something else. So I get a benefit of automated tests and builds with CI. And at some point, I might deploy it to a review application, and someone else is doing the review. It gets approved and then merged back to master. That's basically the continuous integration part. And for the deployment at a later point, somehow it gets automated and put in production before it was in staging and being tested. Some environments require to halt and stop, so it's not really automated, and someone needs to like schedule a maintenance window and click play. My mission is to like remove the play button and make everyone deploy into production. And that's the general idea behind that. To get started a little easier, or things like how to like work with that. So before we get actually started with trying some things out, you can actually like go to that repository, you can fork it, and you can do the exercises as I go along. You can also just watch me doing that and do that later on. So the slides are self-contained and the source code is also over there. I will be just moving over here because I have it prepared. So here's a little GitLab project with some source code. And for the first things, I'd say I just want to, okay. I'm going to open the Web IDE, which I didn't want to go over here. I want to go over here. So in order to explore the Web IDE, I tend to like getting started easily in a way that I want to just try it out. And I want to add a new file. And the thing is, the configuration for GitLab CI is located in .gitlab-ci.yaml. So I can just select it over here. And the most simplest playground, or the most simplest way to explore whether the CI runners work and everything else in the pipelines is working. I started out saying, okay, I want to run it in a Docker image. Let's just use CentOS 7 as a tag. And I define a simple test job, basically freely definable without the keywords. And I want to run a specific command, which needs a tab. And we say script and tab again, dash echo hello from our lovely GitLab meetup. And just to have an exit code, I'd say exit 1. And this is basically it. Then I say, okay, I want to commit it. This is basically feature meetup as a new branch, if I can type correctly, at first CI config draft. So this is the thing. And in this account, I don't need a new merge request. And with that, I can just wait for everything applied. And the nifty thing within the Web IDE is that I have the rocket symbol over here, which brings me directly into the CI pipeline view, basically on the side. And I can just continue working when I want to. But in this example, or in this exercise, I just want to see what the pipeline is doing. And I'm changing basically into the CI/CD pipeline view. I can see that I've defined the test job. And when I click on it, I can see that basically the CI runner is instrumented, the Docker image is pulled, some setup stuff is going on, and then our script is executed. So were actually being greeted. And just because the exit code was run, it simulates a failure and everything is broken right now. But still, we are within the Web IDE, we can fix things. And just to see that it basically works, I can change the exit code to 0 and fix the CI. Fix the CI config. Let's call it like that. In this regard, still not a merge request, and I can continue working. This is something which I've been teaching a lot of people in my past trainings, because it's really hard to get started in my experience, just to know you're being overwhelmed with sharing specific, you're trying to build your code. And this is just one for the head and the light in between, just to get things going and see, oh, this is how it works. And it also helps to troubleshoot if, for example, the CI runners are not working for some reason. It's the most easiest and the most convenient way to just fire up a job and test whether the CI runners are actually working. So still, this takes some time. So it's finished. Sometimes I just need to talk over the time real quick because the runners are going on. With that, I'd like to switch to some real world example or some more practical example. So I've prepared some Go code within the repository. If we switch back over here, you can see there's basically a main function, which is executed as the entry point when the binary is run. And it just attempts to do the same as before, just printing something. And if you now imagine that this code or this snippet repository was given to you and you need to continue working on it, you actually want to know, does it build? Does it work? Can I now continue with coding? What's best practice in that regard? And for that, since it's Golang or Go, I want to actually configure the continuous integration and continuous deployment thing. And I have the possibility, because you can look it up on the internet, you can Google for it, how have others done it. But we're in the lucky position that for specific languages, there are CI/CD templates already. So when I move over to the GitLab CI YAML for the file templates, I can just search for Go and have my configuration overwritten at some point, and I get a nice template. I do need to make some slight changes to it. So it tells me, please add it to your GitLab project, which is basically, for you, it's your namespace and then the project name. I'm just copying over here because I'm lazy. I'm always lazy. And this is the one I need to edit. And I don't want to call it my binary. I want to call it, Tanuki, which is basically the binary which should be built by the stages and the jobs. For the template itself, it's basically using the Golang Docker image and doing all the setup stuff for Golang, define some stages, and within the stages we have a format job and a compile job, which basically checks whether the Golang format is correct, and then actually builds a binary and also makes it an artifact so we can actually download it later on. For now, we just want to use that and say, okay, I will be adding a CI config for our Go code. And with that, I'm committing the changes, and I don't know, this doesn't really, does it refresh in the way I want? Okay, I'm not even lazy. I'm super nervous that everything is working out. When I navigate into the pipeline code then, and not pipeline code, in the pipeline overview, I can see that there's the test and the build stage, and actually the first job is running right now. So let's just chime in what it is doing. It's setting up the build environment, it's pulling the Docker Golang image, and then hopefully everything is going to happen fast enough. It's also nice to see that there are more colors. The build jobs, the runtime of the build jobs is now shown over here. I think that was coming in the most recent versions, so it's really new to me. And there's the thing, the code which we actually got in our repository is broken because we're using, or I'm using a package, or I'm using a function from a package which has not been imported. So this is what the job is telling me. And it's also telling me from the pipeline, let's just refresh. Okay, the job was broken, so the other stage is not even triggered because the job in the line is needs to be fixed. Now, how can I fix that? Well, I'm navigating into my code and I've prepared it already. We need to, in order to call the print line function, we need to import the FMT package. And this is totally simple. Let's just import that and commit the change once again, fix the code, and add, oh, that's not a good commit, add missing package import. Fix the build is a bad commit message. I'm always teaching people that. With that, I'm hoping that this still updates. Okay, yeah, it always takes a little while. I'm way too fast for everything. Okay, and with that, it should actually complete the build, hopefully. Let's just check over there. Again, it's basically when using containers, you get a reproducible build environment. So it's always the same. It's using the same base image. And then you can just install, run specific things, and afterwards it is destroyed. Only artifacts and caches are shared between the stages and jobs. Between the stages, yeah. And still, sometimes it takes a while. And if you want to like scale it in a specific way, you are advised to use your own hardware, your own virtual environment, where you can just install separate runners and speed things up. So if you, for example, have a project which is C++ and takes half an hour to compile, it's better to just throw hardware at it and let that do. Okay, yeah, it's still taking some time. I'm just looking, how am I in time? Yeah, I'm good in time. Let's do a quick check on the slides. I think I skipped some. Yeah, I'm fixing the build, and the next step will be adding unit tests. Let's just check what it's doing. So everything is fine. It invokes go build, and we are actually getting an artifact. It's totally nice. And as you can see on the right-hand side, you can download the artifact. So that's basically a thing if you generate tables or RPM packages or anything else which needs this specific revision, you can actually download that directly from GitLab or use the REST API to fetch it in an automated fashion, or even define a different job which uploads it to a to aptly to a different package repository or something else. But still, we want to add some, we want to call a function, but in the same moment with adding a function, we also want to write a unit test because testing if the function really works is a good thing. There are specific unit test frameworks around for different languages. So for Python, for Perl, for C++, whatever, there are external frameworks. Golang has that basically built in. So if you're going for a specific format with like you have a code file, and then you just say, okay, it's tanuki.go, and tanuki_test.go implements actually the tests for this source code, and you follow a specific test interface, and then basically everything is built in, and you get even coverage reports for that. The thing is, I just want to try it out. So I've prepared some source code over here. You need to ignore basically the preparations here over above. This is just a function which is called getTanuki, and it returns a string. And for testing this function, it's basically defining a table and checking for specific strings which should be in the returned string from that function. This is a pretty cool thing because you can just add like 20 tests or 20 checks inside, and anytime it fails, you get a feedback immediately and execute it exactly during the CI builds. Right now, the code is not really executed, so we just want to do that. And I'm, again, lazy. I'm just including the source code. And yeah, that should basically be it. And enable the Tanuki feature. Okay, that's basically this step. And the pipeline again should be running. And we're going to format and compile the code. Now is the thing. We actually want to like deploy something, or we want to do a runtime check or something else. So not only the binary we are currently like building, maybe we want to create a package out of it, want to install the package, and then later on install the package to production, or we just create a binary and want to like async it somewhere, use Ansible tasks, Terraform, whatever. Which is basically done within the deployment stages. This only completes when the stages before succeeded, basically, and it's pretty easy to do that or to add that. And for that, I'm just switching again into the GitLab CI YAML. And as you can see over here, we have inside the stages, there's already deploy. So I don't need to really add that. And I can add another job, which I just call run. I assign it to the stage deploy. Super nice with autocomplete. And I want to execute a script which basically executes the Tanuki binary I've created in the previous job. And with that, I think everything should be ready. So in the next step, we are run the Tanuki feature inside CI/CD. I'm always watching out for good commit messages. Because in a year, when you just fix the build or add something, you don't really know why. So with that, the pipeline again has been started. And the new thing is the deployment stage got a new job. So basically right now, everything is running through. Coming back to my slides, let's just see what else I got to tell you up until the pipelines are running. Yeah, another best practice are variables and templates. So when you have some credentials or some sensitive data which you need within your jobs, so basically a MySQL database password or a Kubernetes credentials or something else, you can actually use variables which are passed as environment variables to the runners, and you can hide them in your project settings. So you don't need to actually write them in your CI/CD configuration files, and with permissions granted only to, for example, the owner or the project maintainer. Developers won't see those credentials. You can also instrument specific jobs, for example, to specify a build type, and then a script just builds release binary packages or debug packages, which contain debug symbols for binaries, and even more for that. And you can also use that in specific scopes that you don't need to write all the time my binary or something else. But keep in mind that not all scopes work for replacing variables. So you actually need to check the documentation to figure out what's working and what's not. If you're planning to create jobs which always use the same script and stages and specific things like you have jobs for Red Hat 7, Red Hat 8, and CentOS, basically all use the same. You could use YAML templating, which is implemented as extends in the GitLab CI configuration. I've linked the documentation over here. This is something which I prefer heavily using after I made everything work. Okay, let's just see. The pipeline is still not finished, not running, but let's just see what's going on. But everything else has been finished. Okay. When it comes to monitoring for the CI/CD pipelines, one thing which I recommend doing is using or to monitor the CI runners, which when you are hosting it on yourself, on your own infrastructure, you gotta use the REST API. There are specific check plugins for different monitoring tools out there. And GitLab itself also has self-monitoring, of course, and CI/CD analytics, where I can just also do reporting on which jobs failed in the past, how healthy is your January pipeline, and you can also, for example, see how often builds fail and maybe optimize the development workflows and whatnot. Let's just check over here. Yes, our pipeline succeeded. We are now greeted with a fancy Tanuki, and I've also added a URL over here. I couldn't make it happen to make it clickable because it's a shell output, but still, that's an older demo website I created, but I totally love it. I just wanted to share it with you, and maybe someone now feels old because he or she knows Clippy. It's live, so you can just open it and stress it. Yeah, and what else I wanted to share with GitLab CI/CD, it's also possible to maintain your own container images. For example, if you're planning to heavily use your own custom Docker images, you can do that. You can even install specific build tools inside, because downloading them all the time is pretty time consuming. You can pin it to specific software versions. For example, if you install it with pip install or something else. And once you are sure you want to really rebuild the container images, you can just do that. I think with 12.8 or 12.7, the container registry was enabled by default. So can actually make use of GitLab's container registry. And yeah, you can also use these Docker images, for example, to create your own build architecture for creating binary packages. So real good packages. FPM is not really good. in my opinion, I'm planning to do some webinars later this year because I really think that best practices should be shared. If you're interested in that, please keep in touch or get in touch with me, or we'll just talk about it later on. With that, there are other things where you can try it out. One thing is code coverage. So within, for example, Golang, you get some test results which are parsable via regex, and you can specify that within the project settings and try it out. I'm leaving that as an exercise to you. So if you're trying it out and if you like try it out and it works, tweet me or share it on Twitter, blog about it, share your findings. Also, if you want to highlight specific batches, which means build passing or something else, or build is broken, which is not that good, you can also generate these batches and embed them into your README. And the last one is, yeah, if you use the current code, you start coding, you break something, because breaking things is always fun, and you can just try it out and practice working with the Web IDE, with CI config, with code, and don't give up. I think it took me 20 or 30 commits until I was totally up and running with GitLab CI. So rebase and squash is totally fine if you know that from Git. Just to round up, and I think I'm somehow good in time, hopefully. You can use the Web IDE basically for setting up CI/CD. So I prefer that way. I know that there are different ways, like the CLI or automation, or this the button in the web interface. But still, the Web IDE is, I think, on a good way to like replace existing IDEs, and you can also use it for simple coding tasks. It's not a full-blown IDE, but still, if there's no license available for some IDEs, or you cannot install something on your computer, you can even code Golang on your iPad. So tried that already, works. It's really nice. If you go with CI configuration and everything else, just do short iterations and one job, one stage, go one by one, because it gets really complicated after a while, and it doesn't. It's not necessary that you struggle or say, I don't like this anymore. So just keep it short. And if you have a problem, just join the community, like the discourse forums or somewhere else, and we are here to help you. Make use of the language templates. That's of course a good idea. Unit tests, test coverage, and also the pointing to the credentials, keeping safe, container images. And yeah, that's basically it. And last but not least, before I say thanks, I want to highlight one of our events from the technical evangelism team, because next week KubeCon would have taken place. It's not, but we decided to make it a Cloud Native Summit, which happens as a virtual event. So on March 30th, when you got the time, we would be happy to have you. Save the date, join us. And with that, I'm finished and I'm open for questions and everything else.
Thanks, Michael. Does everyone just want to indulge me for a second? Let's give Michael a round of applause. Can you turn off your mute for a second and turn your cameras on, and we'll give Michael a nice round of applause for that presentation.